Ladies and gentlemen of the press, it is a pleasure to welcome you to Mackey Street, the headquarters of the Free National Movement. As this was at very short notice, let me introduce the Deputy Leader, Mr. Shannon Cartwright. We have the Member of Parliament for St. Anne's, the Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama, but most significantly our esteemed leader, Michael Pintard, the Member of Parliament for Marco City.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the press, and to FNMs who are gathered, thank you very much for coming. Let me begin by stating the obvious. I represent the community of Marco City. I have since 2017, and for 2 consecutive terms, the residents have put their confidence in me in Grand Bahama. For the short time that I've represented that constituency, we have developed some of the most robust programs nationally. And I want to make this point, not as a point of boast, but simply to make the point that when all Bahamians work together, we have the ability to do transformative things for Bahamians. The alliance we have built in Marco City, and by extension Grand Bahama, is made up of persons who are identified as traditional Free National Movement supporters, persons who still say today that philosophically they grew up PLP, but they support in Marco City, they support in Pintard, and independents who believe that they have a fighting chance of benefiting from the bounty of our country under an FNM and under my leadership. I make this point because our Prime Minister refuses to govern for all Bahamians. And the work that we do every day, we do for all Bahamians. Prior to the last general election, the Prime Minister and his deputy promised a number of significant developments for the people of Grand Bahama in general, Freeport in particular. They have failed to deliver on these promises. They promised a world-class airport, and have announced this airport on multiple occasions, only for the residents to be faced not only with consistent delays, but they have also changed the deal on multiple occasions. What started out as a public-private partnership, where the private entity would provide the resources, and that or another private entity would provide the management oversight of the airport, and the government would enter into a relationship with these entities, have now turned into the government being the funder of this particular project, and the project has not gotten off the ground despite all of the groundwork having been done, much of it being done by the Free National Movement prior to us submitting office in 2021. The government has had more time to sell the hotel, the Grand Lucayan, than we had since the time we acquired it and created an arrangement between the ITM Group and Royal Caribbean, where we looked at having a deal both for the development of the harbor as well as the development for the hotel. This administration came to government, now 3 years, and again, after complaining about how long we've kept it in our possession, how much money we have paid, and they have failed in 3 years, more time than we had post-Dorian, since the time that we again acquired it, in order for them to get a sale. So again, the Prime Minister came to Grand Bahama just recently to meet with the potential buyers. Remember now, this was casted as a deal already done. The Prime Minister, again, did not provide any details. I want to say, on behalf of all of our colleagues, the people of Grand Bahama, most importantly, we are prayerful and we are hopeful that this sale is the real deal now. We know before they oversold and underdelivered. We are prayerful and hopeful. We are pulling for a deal that can work and assist the people of Grand Bahama. But with this administration, we have to wait and see. They are long on promises, short on delivery. So they promised the airport, promised the hotel. They promised to transform West Grand Bahama. During the by-election, we placed more contractors on roofs on the top of roof inside homes, working on homes that have been neglected for years, than the government that supposedly had a small home repair program. So abysmal has been the failure of Prime Minister Davis and his team in transforming homes in Grand Bahama. We believe that less than 200 homes have been repaired in Grand Bahama since the change of government. During the period post-Dorian, we have touched in Grand Bahama more than 1,500 homes. We have assisted 10,000, 7,000, 5,000, 2,500. We've been working diligently, and even now as members of parliament, we continue on a weekly basis to make resources available to residents who need help. We've engaged in road paving in Marco City. The member for East Grand Bahama spearheaded a project in Hudson, in the city of Freeport. We run a robust social safety net program that assists residents, because right now in Grand Bahama, many seniors are having difficulty simply getting food assistance. Despite the best efforts of the minister, the challenge is with a broken system we lay at the feet of the Minister of Finance. I raise these issues to make the point that when a prime minister comes to Grand Bahama claiming that he is fighting for Bahamians, he's fighting for Grand Bahamians, we say, what credibility could he have when he represents Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, where he is failing? Yes. Where he is failing with basic infrastructure. Yes. After serving that community for over 20 years, we still do not have, throughout Cat Island, potable water. So here is a prime minister who is busy talking about him fighting for Bahamians, as opposed to members of the Free National Movement who've been fighting all along, 3 members of parliament in Grand Bahama who don't just fly there, we live there. And he is running on about fighting for Bahamians. Fight for better water conditions in Cat Island. Fight for a police station that can't seem to grow beyond a cubby hole in the north of Cat Island. Fight for the people in Eleuthera who lack both water and light on a consistent basis. So the chairman, if he wished to protest, we say, yes, protest against the power company if you like, but show some credibility by also protesting against BPL. But to protest against BPL is to look in the mirror and protest against a government that has raised the cost of electricity at least 4 times since they have been in government. And so if you are interested in convincing the Bahamian people that you are fighting for Bahamians, go to Maguana, go to Michael in general, and help them with the inconsistency in supply of electricity. Yes. If you are serious, go to Mangrove Key, community that has been good to the Progressive Liberal Party for many years. South Andres, South and Central have been loyal. Demonstrate your fighting powers by doing something for them. No, fight for the people in New Providence, yes, who face consistent blackouts on a regular basis. Yes. And on the issue of transparency, the Prime Minister, it's incredible that with a straight face, see, I believe if you have particular sins, you try to avoid those subjects, but not to be positioning yourself as a paragon of virtue who could talk about them things when you ain't qualified. Transparency is not a word that the Prime Minister and his colleagues can use with any serious conviction or moral authority. Speaking about power, the electricity privatization that we are undergoing right now as a country screams for transparency. The public would like to know, who are you giving the generation of power to? Who is getting the contract? Have you increased, of at least one of your providers, the rental generation component of power that Bahamian people are paying for? Have you moved dramatically upwards in the amount of money that we are paying just for generation rental? Help us understand. Will the traditional assets that generate power at BPL be given to a particular group? And we say given in large measure because the Prime Minister refuses to outline the terms of any arrangement between those companies that would be involved in the generation. And so when you talk about transparency, if you're doing a good thing for people, why not tell the people the whole thing? The employees work there. If you're doing a good thing for them, why not discuss it in detail with them? If you're doing a good thing from transmission and distribution to generation, to building a regasification plant, to building a plant on Iraqi, to building pipelines from Clifton to Blue Hills, or from Iraqi to Blue Hills, just tell us the details. It may be a good deal, but we have no way of knowing because this Prime Minister is not committed to transparency. He also talks about full disclosure. We have, I'm confident, over 100 questions on the agenda this early in the administration and cannot get straight answers from him. Not on the navigational aids, not on the software on the transport that was developed, where one company, a series of companies bid, but the company that eventually won the bid was not even a part of the process. In fact, the companies that some of the companies they're giving contracts to were formed within weeks of the time that they achieved the contract. So and we raised the question in the House of Assembly, giving the names of the company, having researched when the companies were formed. And this Prime Minister has the gall to come to Grand Bahama and talk about transparency. If he was interested, for example, in campaign finance reform, he's had long enough to introduce the legislation. So he wishes to know exactly who do we benefit from in terms of contributions. Well, we're saying, Prime Minister, we are willing to lay the list of our donors on the table. Are you willing to lay yours? Are you willing to answer whether or not most of the major companies that are presently engaged by this government that your administration has received contributions from? Are you willing to answer those questions and to say to what extent? Are you willing to tell us the terms of your public-private partnership, how long they are for, how much money the Bahamian government is going to be on the hook for? Sorry, the Bahamian people will be on the hook for over how many years? Are you willing to deny that from the time of Sir Lyndon to now, Grand Bahama Port Authority have in fact made contributions to all the political organizations, including yours? And that Hubert Ingham has spoken about this over and over in the press. He's spoken it in the House of Assembly that's been carried in the press over and over. Are you willing to comment on whether or not you have received? And have you received any funds from Hannes Babak, who's an integral player in the affairs of the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the conflict that existed between both families and remain a fixture in this particular saga? Are you willing to comment on that? And so today we want to say to the Prime Minister, your attempts at deflection does not change the fact that you're not improving the airlift in Grand Bahama. You have not built the airport. Hopefully we can get the hotel sold. That West Grand Bahama, in fact, continue to deteriorate on your watch. And that East Grand Bahama, the member is here, who played a pivotal role in its development. Will you or can you do better? And because you've lost Grand Bahamians, you now run a smear campaign. I mentioned a few days ago, my wife has been the target of this administration, claiming that she was an employee of GBPA, hence the stance we took. The reality is she works for Hutchison Whampoa. However, the member of parliament for Pine Ridge was, I believe, the vice president of Grand Bahama Port Authority. Can we swing all those bank accounts open? I already said we're willing to have a real discussion and open whatever books you need open. Can you open yours? The truth is we are fighting for Grand Bahamians. That's why every week look at what we do in terms of a social safety net. Look at what we continue to do to assist people in being made whole as a result of Dorian. This government cannot brag or boast about their record in Grand Bahama because it is an abysmal record. What have we said about the Grand Bahama Port Authority? We've made it very clear. The present shareholders, we encourage them to divest their shares entirely or in part from GBPA. We believe in the new dispensation that Bahamians, Grand Bahamians in particular, should be given an opportunity to invest, to create, to reimagine a new regulatory regime in Freeport. This regime should include members who are shareholders, many of you who may wish to buy shares. Members of the government may also appoint someone to the board. Licensees should have a say in who governs it. And of course, there should be elected members who will also serve as a part of this regulatory regime. The government refuses to discuss what will be the future under them of a GBPA. We have put forth at least a solid recommendation. We believe that at the end of the day, more Grand Bahamians should play a role in managing our own affairs. We've also said to the government, the 300+ million you have identified as being owed to the Bahamian people, we wish to join you in that fight. Is it possible for us to see the invoice? Share with the public. If you are fighting to retrieve public money, it's not private business. You should be able to lay the document in the House of Assembly. The Free National Movement and our parliamentarians are ready to join you to raise hell to make sure we get our money. But again, you are now, you're saying that you have private discussions with a view of retrieving the funds, which you know full well that GBPA has no resources to pay 10, 15, or 20 million, much less 357. But at least let's educate the public. Let's share the invoice that all and sundry can have sight of it. Is there any reason why you are not transparent on just sharing that? Why are you not transparent in indicating that the government attempted to lead a charge to purchase GBPA? Any reason why you would not have a full and candid discussion about that? Are you prepared to say whether or not any colleagues of yours who are now in the private sector have indicated their interest in purchasing? And by the way, we support Bahamians of all types making a bid to buy those assets. But can the Prime Minister indicate why he has not discussed his knowledge of the groups that have been waiting and chopping at the bit to buy GBPA? And is he or them, are they sour because it didn't go the way they planned? So in our view, we have an opportunity as a country for government and opposition to collectively work in the best interest of the people of Grand Bahama. Don't come to Grand Bahama playing with people's emotions, because you're no more committed. You are no more committed. No more committed to transparency, no more committed to black empowerment, no more committed to economic empowerment of the residents of Grand Bahama. You've not demonstrated it thus far. And that's why, while we say we want a reimagining, a reconfiguration of municipal government, of local government in Grand Bahama, we also say we do not want central government under Davis Cooper to take over the regulatory functions in Grand Bahama either. Because we know you will inject politics into every consideration of license, every consideration of service charges being paid and what properties are to be repossessed. We've seen your heavy-handedness right in Nassau, with armed forces accompanying government agencies that could have gone on the computer and determined if a business hadn't paid their NIB, if they weren't compliant with Ministry of Finance requirements, or if they had violated something in immigration. But instead, in a show of force with guns, you came into a variety of businesses. And public, don't be deceived. Don't credit him for stopping it, that there's a better way to do business. No, he was there all along. Do you really think finance could have sent a paramilitary group into businesses without the concurrence of the Prime Minister? Not possible. He deals with a heavy hand, but with a smiling face. And so, we make the simple point to the government of the Bahamas that if you are serious about helping to develop Grand Bahama, and Freeport in particular, let's have collaborative discussion between members of the public through civil society, faith-based organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, GBPA, and of course, make sure that local and central government officials are fully integrated. That's what a mature, reasonable government would do, rather than having a spat in the public domain which erodes the confidence of investors. And let me finally say this about Grand Bahama and Freeport in particular. The same PLP that seeks to give you the impression, Grand Bahamians, that they are fighting for you, that they want to make sure that no private company or shareholders trample on your rights. Do you know that there was a time when the power company, sanitation services, the water company were all a part of what is considered to be the GBPA? And they were all privatized. In other words, those revenue-generating entities were able to take the revenue stream that they had and put it in a private company and insulate it from any government, if they went after GBPA, getting to touch their profits. And you know under which administration every one of them were privatized? The Progressive Liberal Party. Not just under one term, but multiple terms, from I believe 1973 onward. So this is the government that seeks to position itself as being interested in empowering the common man and woman, but on their watch. And by the way, the sitting prime minister has been in that administration in a pivotal position for decades. On their watch, the revenue-generating assets were privatized. ZNS, I believe, was the station. I trust that ZNS is here today so you can ask as many questions. I believe, if I'm correct, that ZNS read a meme that was put on social media by those persons working for the Progressive Liberal Party, accusing the FNM and myself of receiving $5 million for general elections. Well, again, for our election campaign. Well, elections haven't come yet, but I just want to say if that $5 million is out there, by all means, send it. If you need us to send you the account, we will send you the account. We don't have no problems with that. But we are prepared to hold them and all others accountable. We don't run from that. We don't run from that. We will hold them accountable. But we want to say it is an absolute lie. Not 5 million, not 4 million, not 3 million. We could go, I will know how much they got. And we could name investor after investor, local and international. Unlike them, we believe in campaign finance reform. But when the media comes to ask about the books, at what point did we get to this stage where a meme or a message online gets a media house to ask it as if it is a legitimate allegation, which we never heard before? All we know is we saw it online. But I want the public to think about this. We also saw online, we also saw some memes and messages of members of the government being accused of the most dastardly acts conceivable. Members of government at the highest level. Did ZNS or any other media house ask them if that was accurate? But since you ask us, and we're not like them, since you ask us, we're saying on the finance matter about them financing the campaign, we have no knowledge of it. But as we said, all companies who are interested, who are not engaged in illegal activities, who are interested in supporting the transformation of the country by supporting the party that is ready to deliver this country, just call us. Just call us. No, send the big thing, not the little one. And so we stop there only by underscoring that we want fair play in the country, not fabrication and theater in order to seek to smear individuals in the party or smear the party. We know that We know that the PLP is the government of quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. So that's how, so don't attempt to put that on us. In fact, if you were not, you would be prepared to reveal many of the contracts that you've signed that have been single-sourced. Single sourcing in and of itself is not bad, but when you do it consistently without reporting the details, that is worrisome. When you avoid competitive bidding on a consistent basis, you have no moral authority to talk about transparency and accountability. When a whole PS is suing government ministers and leaders because they're being sidelined for being whistleblowers, you cannot talk about transparency. When top brass of immigration are sent home or are forced to leave and others are put on administrative leave with no logical explanation, and the most you could do is shuffle a cabinet, you cannot talk about transparency. I recently received, by way, and many of you have read it because social media hot, about threats about when you were chairman of the Free National Movement, you resigned. Just remember, we have everything related to it and we could release it. So I just want to say here today, you are in charge of the government. I make myself available. I ask you to call a commission of inquiry on all matters related to Peter Nygaard and the time he was here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Call a commission of inquiry. Don't be a coward. Don't be a coward. Don't be a coward in the backwaters slipping nonsense and lies. Let's have some eminently qualified, both Bahamians and international folks, highly respected, and let's call a commission of inquiry. So if that's the one you want to play, let's play that. But call the commission of inquiry. While you're at it, just know the confidence of the Bahamian people in our criminal justice system is important and indispensable for a country that is interested in telling the world we are governed by laws. And so while you're at it, make a commitment to not only give regular updates on some of the scurrilous accusations that have been made against persons in armed forces, people who are part of the policy-making regime in this country, but let's conduct a transparent investigation so that all and sundry can see that we are a country of laws. We know you don't like this idea because we ask you to put in place a select committee on immigration so that people can come with papers, with evidence, people who have been affected, people who have been perpetrators. We want them to come and tell the truth about how broken our system is. You voted it down in Parliament, members of the PLP, because you don't want an open, transparent inquiry on how we govern this country. I'll stop there.
Good afternoon, everyone. from ZNS. First thing, Mr. Pintodd, I'd like to clarify that I know you said a word about ZNS. It was not ZNS that said anything about $5 million. It was in fact another station that is present here that I will not name.
You should though. You should. You should, because it was irresponsible of them, so you should.
It was irresponsible, but again, it's a growing media, and I think we should all respect that. I'm sorry, I missed the name of the media house you mentioned it. I'm not going to name that station.
Oh, okay, I see.
I'm going to move into my question.
Okay, very well.
As someone that's living in...
So if it was not ZNS that raised the question, you have my apology that if it was not ZNS.
I appreciate that, sir. Well, my first question is, as someone that has lived in Grand Bahama, that has represented Grand Bahama for 2 terms consecutively.
I am doing it now.
Yeah. Why is it that we haven't heard from you before on the Grand Bahama Port Authority?
You had to have been off this planet if you didn't hear from me, because I have made multiple statements on Grand Bahama Port Authority as well as the power company. In and out of government, I've been very candid. In fact, one of the ministers, the former ministers, reminded me, and who served with Ingram. At one point, I proposed a demonstration outside of the local establishment there, and he said, "You in government. Governments don't protest, they go and solve problems." And this is, remember the period? So this is not new. Just simply do the research. I've been consistent in my position. So let me finish the answer. I've been consistent in my position. We have previously responded to the proposed increase for water prices. We made public statements, and we said it was a conflict of interest between the way in which the GBPA was addressing the matter, and of course, the shareholders in GBPA are also the shareholders in the water company. So we needed.
First time that they asked for an increase.
Exactly. So it was the first time that they'd asked for an increase. So we were on the record addressing this issue. The same thing is true about the power company, that we expressed, in a very strong way. We asked our member for East Grand Bahama to issue a statement. We were the first out of the gate on it. We know that the rates are not yet in place, and they wouldn't be for the near term. But nevertheless, we wanted to go through the consultation process, and I want you, the media, to be clear on this. We reached out to the power company seeking a meeting. And if I remember correctly, just yesterday they indicated they are not prepared to meet at this time. We've given them an opportunity. We will now speak to their parent company. And then we'll take Grand Bahamians of all political stripes, not just to them, but to IRCA, to the GBPA, all of those who represent themselves as the regulator. We'll go and have a conversation with them. And we'll do so with a substantial amount of residents from Freeport and Grand Bahama. So I just want to put on the record, just for simplicity, it is not true that we have not been speaking about it. Each of the media houses here have carried our comments, and my comments in particular, about GBPA and about the power company. So that PLP lie that they put out, we want to lay that to rest. It's nonsense.
Do you feel that the Bahama Port Authority has lived up to its responsibilities under the Knoxville Creek Agreement?
No, again, that's been a part of our statements. We have made the point that we felt in a number of ways they have fallen short. But we have also said, so has central government. And when I say central government, we don't only mean the PLP, though they WASA. We were talking about us, that there are things that all governments should have done that we have not successfully done. So rather than play the game of saying, well, since, in this case, the PLP, they've lost support in Grand Bahama, so they say, it ain't our fault, it's them people over there. Yeah, we agree it's them people that they share some of the responsibility, but what about you? What about, in other words, if they would stop their infighting, if they had stopped their infighting, the airport deal would have moved faster. And so I just want to say this among us here, and the people listening, that if they weren't fighting inside, that airport deal would have been done a long time ago. Now, we are informed, we don't know how accurate it is, but we are understanding that when there are competing interests on who subcontractors and others would be, sometimes that could slow down the process. They should indicate whether that's factual or not factual. Whereas, and so the Prime Minister's come, and he's now displaced his deputy, who has been working in Grand Bahama for quite some time. First, he sent Mitchell ahead to do reconnaissance and stir the water, and now the Prime Minister is coming behind. What is he coming behind to do? He says he will now take over the small home repair. He will relaunch it. You mean your deputy couldn't do that? And before you get to the deputy, you mean the minister with responsibility for Grand Bahama couldn't do that? You need the Prime Minister is going to pause his busy travel schedule to come and relaunch the housing project? Wow. Well, we welcome you because people need help. Roofs are still leaking. It's hurricane season, right? And so, yes.
Good afternoon. Sandra Simonet for Eyewitness News. During your speech, you mentioned a little bit about the shareholders in the Port Authority. Do you feel as if the families, those shareholders, have failed Bahama as well?
No, when we talk about GBPA, we are talking about shareholders. Listen, we want Freeport to continue to be a zone where you're able to get preferential incentives to do business. We don't want that to change. So when I talk about support for the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, let me just say, to educate the PLP trolls, that the Hawksbill Creek Agreement is different than GBPA. It's different than the shareholder. The Hawksbill Creek Agreement is a legislative construct that carves out an area in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas where incentives are provided to businesses, local and international, that's operating in that space. So it's a free trade zone that we supported. And the majority of the investments in that free trade zone has come under an F&M government. We want to remind the Prime Minister of that. It's come under Hubert Alexander Ingram's government. And so let me just say that. So what we are saying is we believe that the shareholders ought to divest entirely or in part. We have already seen indications that they are open to doing so. And so we know some of the groups on all sides that have expressed an interest. We want to know why the government seeks to block some people from investing while massaging others. That's what we're concerned about. So when they want to talk about who's conflicted, the conflicted is doing most of the talking when the Prime Minister opens his mouth.
You also spoke about government being more transparent and showing those invoices in regards to the money that government says that
Of course.
the Port Authority owes. Do you have any doubts that the Port Authority owes government money?
We simply do not know, and we want to know. And we want to go and and we want to get the money. If it's owed, we want to get the money. But we simply don't know.
Good afternoon, Mr. Torres, Travis Minority. If you're successful and elected in the next election, and this fight between the government and the GPPA is still ongoing, what will you do specifically with regards to this money that is said to be outstanding?
Again, we don't know what is outstanding, but if money is outstanding, we don't have to wait for the change of government. We will stand with the government today. If it is verified that monies are owed, that we will explore the options to get the money back. I mean, that's straightforward for us. So we don't have to be elected to do that. We're saying today, we will stand with this government. So we are parliamentarians. We have some parliamentarians here. You mean you can't lay the document? You can't call even in private and say, listen, here's the document. I want you to see this so that when you speak, you don't misspeak. Before we came here, we're talking about banking reform right now as a party. And we've made some concrete recommendations on our policy position when we come to government either next year or the following year. Today, we met with the governor of the central bank. We had a very productive discussion with the governor and his entire senior team. We are about dialogue with a view of taking action that is informed by the information. We only ask the government to be transparent, share the information. There may be no daylight between us. What we will not be doing, though, is having fights in the public domain ahead of even educating the public about what the conflict is about. When the two families were fighting with each other, it did tremendous damage to the economy of Freeport and Grand Bahama by extension. It was horrible. We must never be in that position again. And lo and behold, here comes Prime Minister Davis to actually take that conflict and elevate it to another level. Because when a prime minister and a chairman is fighting with a private, a semi-private group, what they're also doing is unintentionally telling other investors or potential investors that, listen, if you don't do what I say, dog eat your lunch. We coming for you. And how you think, I mean, you don't need to send that message to potential investors in a fragile economy, an economy that is rebounding. And so we are concerned about their approach. We will not behave, Travis, we will not behave the way they behave. We're not like them in that regard.
The Prime Minister also calls you a water boy for the Grand Bahama.
Yes.
What do you say about that?
I call him a defender of criminals historically in his private practice. So if he wants to call me a water boy, I say, listen, look at me even before entering politics on the things I was focused on. I was a young activist fighting for the empowerment of Bahamians. I marched against a tremendous amount of decay in our community and worked against it. So he's in no position to say to someone who every day working on behalf of Bahamians to give the impression that we behave like some of those who are sending out voice notes on his behalf. I'm told that the term trick means somebody who's prepared to be paid in order to carry out bad assignments on behalf of others. For him to put those labels out there is to suggest that men and women in the Free National Movement who are fighting for grand Bahamians, that we are prepared to cut deals and not fight. All we've been doing is fighting. He has not yet laid out a plan for the future of Grand Bahama. We have said openly, divest, because we don't believe that you have the wherewithal to transform Grand Bahama. That's what we said to the owners. Does that sound like somebody who's carrying water for anyone? Only people I carrying water for is the folks in Elutra who can't get water from this government. We are carrying water. We are carrying water for victims of crime, that this government is slow to address. When people want to fake as if they are acting decisively doing what? Firing somebody whose information was already in the public domain weeks before, and you only fire them after it has been circulated widely on social media? Really? We carrying water for those victims of crime. That's what we carrying water for. For people who can't get their business license signed off on or their projects because they're not on the right side of the politics. That's what we carrying water for.
Just to be clear, I didn't miss it when you were speaking earlier, but did the GBPA contribute to your campaign in 2020?
I've already answered that question already. I've already answered that every political I want you to hear me. Every political organization from the time of Pinling, PLP and FNM, the FNM and the PLP benefited from contributions from a number of companies. Here's who's in the chair right now, the Progressive Liberal Party, who's circumventing the competitive bidding process. Can you get them to answer on the record if any of those companies are contributing to them? And so what I don't want you to do, I certainly won't, I don't want you to fall into the trap of asking the next government. I want you to ask the government who's in the chair, and let's see how transparent he is. And so I'm saying construction companies who are all companies that are involved in the private arrangements that he has announced. Ask him, just ask the Prime Minister. Say, sir, we want you to be transparent. Don't blink, because he don't blink either. And we want to know which companies have contributed to the Progressive Liberal Party over the course of the time that you've been in government, as Deputy Prime Minister and as Prime Minister. Are you prepared to lay the document? Oh, we're prepared. The Treasurer is here, the Chairman is here. We know all the contributors. We know the contributors. We know the contributors, and so we are prepared to lay the record. Listen, we talked even about the Commission of Inquiry. He is in the chair. He has a lot of power. He can actually call one.
Good afternoon, Bertha McDermott from R News. On this issue of campaign financing, you mentioned just now and earlier about your willingness to disclose anyone that would have contributed to the campaign and challenge the government to do the same. And you also said that you are for campaign finance reform or legislation that would support that. Now, there would be some criticism considering that you were a part of the former FNM administration along with Mr. Thompson, who served as the cabinet.
All of us.
The majority of
yes,
right, that served with the former administration where that did not happen. What would your response be to that, considering that you were in a position or a part of a government that had the ability to move such legislation and it did not happen?
We in charge now. We in charge.
My next question, you also mentioned that you met with the governor of the central bank today. Are you able to give us a little bit of what that conversation looks like, considering it comes after you made your suggestions on the way your administration would change banking if this African administration was to take office? Those comments got some backlash for people who felt it wasn't possible or it wasn't based on fact. So did that conversation advance your position?
It was a wonderful conversation with the governor and his team. They were very accommodating. He laid out the range of things that they are working on. A number of those things coincide with the position that we have taken. So we are not disabused of any of the views. We are not dissuaded from any of the views that we have. Because in fact, we are encouraged that we are on the right track in terms of what we have been proposing to the public. And what we have heard from the public is overwhelming support for the position that we are taking. That people, I mean, think about it. You can't take a $50 check if you don't have a bank account at a particular bank to simply go in and get it cash. Many times, even if it's drawn on the account, people are being turned around. We have concerns about many of the fees that are being introduced, particularly on electronic transactions, etc. And so we are firmly supporting the protection of the community, and the governor has made it absolutely clear that that is certainly one of the commitments that they have, and they are doing it in a very systematic manner. The member for East Grand Bahama on our behalf has reached out also to the head of the clearing bank, so we intend to meet with them as well. So our goal is to meet with all of the stakeholders. But the overwhelming response from the public has been favorable. We saw one entitled ex-politician on the front page of one of the dailies, I think it may have been yesterday or day before, talking about that we were talking fool. The reality is, you know, in the article he indicates he didn't even read the proposal. How foolish could that be, right? If you are serious about weighing in on a matter, one would think. This has dropped a couple times. Sorry, that was deliberate, eh? So we care about all of the media, including ZNS. That's ours. So we care. So again. The largest voice that we have heard recently in a very negative way was for an esteemed businessman who we believe his comments reek of entitlement, and we believe it may be a result of other comments we've made on another subject. But we are saying the very recommendations he made in his comments, we had already made in the proposal, and had he read it, he would not have insulted me and the FNM unnecessarily. So Berthany, the public has responded to the comments we've been making, and they're saying, listen, something has to change. We would only say to members of the public, however, in your own personal life, manage your own finances in a way that you do not allow institutions to put you in a vulnerable position. Be frugal in how you spend your money and how you manage your accounts. And so that we would say that to the public. In my constituency, we've had people who have lost homes in cases where we believe they were not treated fairly. After Dorian, a number of persons did not work. So when payments were deferred, even in COVID, there was an accumulation of bills. Here are families that were paying all along up until the time the breadwinner got ill and had to try and catch up on those accumulated bills after COVID, or the losses they suffered under Dorian. I don't believe it is right. I think it is unconscionable for institutions that had somebody on their pay who was paying their bills, paying their mortgage for 20 years in some cases, and when they fall on hard times, that they lose their home. I'm not talking about the persons who have bad habits, who duck in the calls from the bank. I'm not talking about any of those people. We're talking about people who have legitimately been paying. And just recently, a family in my constituency lost their home despite their best efforts. The mother cashed in what would have been a fund she would have gotten in retirement to pay, made those monies available to the bank, was prepared to pay elevated amounts each month, and still lost the house. The first time they stopped paying is when the husband's leg was injured. First time. And because he's in construction, it's a cyclical business. But they were trying. And so we have to do something. So this is not to protect the irresponsible. This is to protect people that despite their best efforts, things went wrong in their life. And we should provide protection from them so that they could catch themselves.
Good day, Mr. Penton. Carol Campbell from the Tribune. Seemingly, both the opposition and the incumbent government have called for changes in the banking sector. Seemingly, with both being in accordance with that, do you see, I guess, change in that sector coming, I guess, quickly on a parliamentary level, or is there some form of difference that both sides see to how change should come about?
No, I think change is certainly coming. The governor of the central bank and his team, the efforts they are making right now, we believe will pay dividends. We're confident of that. In Parliament, we'll make a difference because the legislation that will be brought, whether it's on the ombudsman who is focused on financial affairs, that ombudsman, that very position, once it's codified in law, because the position presently is held by somebody who serves on a voluntary basis, that will make a difference. You will have someone you can complain to in very specific ways about problems you're having, and we believe that there will be remedies. We also believe that there are members of the Clearing Bank Association who similarly, while they're concerned about their shareholders and making profit, we think are also concerned about Bahamians and their welfare. And we believe that they will contribute ideas and they will guide us, policymakers as well, so we can make sensible decisions. And then the government itself is earning funds from the fees that Bahamians are paying. And so we're going to take a look at the amount that government earn and to figure out if there's some portion of that that can be invested in entrepreneurship so that banks, commercial banks, would take greater risk with micro and small businesses so that they can become medium and large businesses that can add to the bank's profit as well as their own. And if we provide seed money to assist entrepreneurial initiatives, we might find a better way. That may be a better way of investing a portion of the funds that government is collecting from fees.
And with that, we thank the press for taking time out to join us. And of course, we thank all you Lieutenants for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
This is eyewitness. Yes.